Someone attacks you with something they say. What they're saying is wrong. They're being unfair. While all of this is happening, an answer is forming in your head. The perfect response. Right there, ready. Then suddenly you go quiet. You say nothing. Your mouth closes. Your eyes go somewhere else. Maybe you nod. You're fighting to make sure they can't tell you're affected. Then the night ends. Driving home or lying in bed at 2:14 a.m. staring at the ceiling, the responses come. Everything you should have said, every sentence, sharp and exactly right. You replay that scene in your head. But in the version playing in your mind, you say everything you held back. But in the moment that counted, you said nothing. You answered with silence, or told yourself that was an answer. Here's what nobody told you. That silence wasn't weakness. It wasn't cowardice. It wasn't you failing to stand up for yourself. Your nervous system was running a protocol, one it learned before you were old enough to choose. If you're ready, type "shutdown" in the comments and let's begin. What you're about to hear isn't a theory. It's documented. Neuroscience has a name for what happens when the system shuts down. Trauma researchers mapped this silence. Attachment theorists traced it all the way back to its source. Today, we're looking at 5 patterns. Each one is a layer of the same mechanism. By the last one, you'll understand not just what happens, but why your nervous system chose this over every other option available. And here's what the last pattern reveals. Shutting down isn't the absence of a response. It's the most sophisticated one your system knows how to make. Let's start with the first pattern. Picture this. An office, 3:20 in the afternoon. You're in a meeting that's running long. Someone says something dismissive about you, directly, casually, like it was always the truth. 3 people nod. Your manager writes it down. Your chest tightens. Your jaw locks. Something behind your sternum pulls toward your throat. And then, nothing. You look at your notebook. You write a word that means nothing. You disconnect from the room entirely. The response you want to give keeps circling in your head, but you say nothing. You wait for the meeting to end. Call it the freeze window. Let's look at what's happening under the surface. Your brain just ran a threat assessment in under 200 milliseconds. Not a conscious one, an automatic one. And what it calculated wasn't, should I respond? What it calculated was, what is the safest possible output right now? Think of it like a circuit breaker. When the electrical load spikes too fast, a circuit breaker doesn't stop to think about cutting the power. It just cuts. That's what it was built for. Psychologists call this the tonic immobility response. It's a branch of your threat detection system. It doesn't activate when danger is absent. It activates when both fighting back and walking away register as too costly. The part of your prefrontal cortex that builds arguments, constructs sentences, chooses words, goes partially offline. Not because it's weak, because an older, faster part of your brain pulled the override switch. You're not doing this because you're passive. This is your system executing a calculation most people can't even run consciously. That shame you attach to the silence. It was never an accurate read of what happened. It was just the label the room gave you, and you picked it up and carried it home. But what is that freeze window actually protecting? And it's not what you think. That question leads us to the second pattern. That freeze window isn't random. It has a logic, and that logic runs older than memory. Think about the last time you shut down, not at work. That's too common, too everyday. Let's look at something closer, something that hits harder. Picture a family dinner. The shutdown didn't just happen. It happened there, with them. Call it the attachment tax. Your nervous system doesn't treat all threats equally. A stranger being wrong costs almost nothing. You can disagree, walk away, and by that same evening, it means nothing to you anymore. But when the threat comes from someone whose connection has weight in your sense of safety, a parent, a partner, a manager who controls your future, the internal reckoning moves to a completely different level. There's a concept in attachment research called protest behavior suppression. A child's natural protest, crying, arguing, expressing need, when it consistently leads to withdrawal of connection, the nervous system learns to override the protest. Not because the need disappears, because expressing it produces heavier consequences than swallowing it. Think about an argument with your partner. They're shouting at you. You're just about to say something real, something big, something that's been sitting there for a long time, and you stop yourself.
If I say this, nothing will ever be the same, you think. And you're right.
This works like a tax. Every time you spoke up and something shifted between you and the other person, every time you lost warmth, approval, safety, the version of the relationship you needed, Your nervous system logged it, filed it, built a rule from it. The rule was simple: silence is cheaper. You're not weak. You're running tax code that was written before you had a vote. Yeah, that's where things start to shift. And that code doesn't stay in one relationship. It travels. That tax code travels with you into every room, into every relationship, into every conversation where something real is at stake. And even when you don't notice it, that braking mechanism is running in the background, always on standby. And this is where it starts to look like a personality trait. Saturday afternoon, a friend says something dismissive about something you care about. Not cruel, just careless. Their intention wasn't to hurt you or throw your shortcomings in your face. That's exactly why it stings. Because it was so offhand. You feel the familiar pull, the internal argument assembling itself in real time. And then you redirect. You change the subject. You laugh at something else. You make it easy for everyone. Later you think, why didn't I just say something? Call it the harmony override. Look, your nervous system isn't trying to make you a pushover. It's trying to protect something specific, the relational environment you're in. And somewhere, some time ago, it learned that conflict, even legitimate conflict, destabilizes that environment in ways that cost more than the conflict was worth. When people face a threat, they fight, flee, or freeze. Researchers studying the fawn response observed a fourth stress response alongside fight, flight, and freeze. They found that people who grew up in environments where emotional safety was conditional develop an automatic smoothing mechanism. When tension rises, the system doesn't ask what's true. It asks what keeps this stable. And at that point, you're not choosing to fight, flee, or freeze. You're choosing to smooth the threat instead. Like noise-canceling software, your nervous system runs in real time, except what it's canceling is your own signal. This isn't people-pleasing as a character flaw. This is threat management. And the framework that told you it was weakness, it was describing the symptom. It never looked at the source. Drop a mirror emoji in the comments if this just described your last 3 months. That smoothing mechanism has a cost, and it doesn't show up in the moment. It shows up later. That brings us to the fourth pattern. In a different room with a different person about something that seems completely unrelated. Tuesday evening, you're alone. No conflict, no tension, and out of nowhere, you're furious. Not at anyone specific, just full, like something has been building inside you. That anger has risen all the way to your chest, and it's pressing there. You don't know why you're angry, but your body does. Call it delayed detonation. When you swallow a feeling or a sentence in the moment, it might not feel like much right then, but that small fire that starts burning inside you grows over time into something larger. Here's the mechanism. When your nervous system suppresses a response, stops the protest, smooths the conflict, cancels the signal, the energy that response was carrying doesn't disappear. It gets stored somatically in your shoulders, your jaw, the pressure behind your eyes. There's research in somatic psychology on exactly this, particularly around body-based trauma storage. The body keeps a running ledger. Every suppressed response is a deposit. At some point, the account overflows. The overflow almost never comes out aimed at the original source. It comes out sideways, at someone safe, at yourself, as a kind of free-floating irritability you can't explain to anyone because you can't explain it to yourself. Maybe something happened at work that day. You couldn't say what you needed to say, and you pushed it down. The day ended normally. You came home. Your partner made a small mistake about something that didn't really matter, and you reacted hard. Before they even understood what happened, their heart was broken. This isn't emotional dysregulation. This is a system that was never given a clean exit route. The anger isn't the problem. The closed loop is. And that closed loop has one more layer, the deepest one, the one that makes all of this feel permanent. The fifth pattern, that closed loop, that sense that this is just who you are, that you're someone who doesn't speak up, someone who goes quiet, someone who processes everything alone at 2 a.m., because that's the only place it feels safe. Here's the final layer. You're sitting in your car in an empty parking lot, 6:47 in the evening. Something happened. Maybe a conversation or a confrontation that never actually happened. Another moment where you went silent. And now you're sitting in the car, engine off. You're not ready to go inside yet. And the thought comes, not aggressive, just quiet and certain. I always do this. I always freeze. I'm always the one who says nothing. Call it the identity seal. This is the mechanism that makes the pattern self-reinforcing. When your nervous system runs the shutdown protocol enough times, your conscious mind builds a story around it, not a lie. A map. This is who I am. And once that map is drawn, the nervous system uses it as confirmation. Every new shutdown becomes evidence. The story becomes the cage. Schema therapy calls this a maladaptive self-schema, a core belief built from repeated experience that filters every new situation through the same lens. You don't just shut down anymore, you expect to. And that expectation narrows the window before the threat even arrives. This isn't your personality. This is a learned prediction running on outdated data. The data was accurate once, in the environment where the protocol was built. But you're not in that environment anymore. The system just hasn't received the update. None of these patterns exist alone. The freeze window, the attachment tax, the harmony override, delayed detonation, the identity seal. These aren't 5 different problems. They're 5 outputs of a single system. A nervous system that learned, under real pressure, that silence was the safest response available. While most people read shutting down as weakness, your system read it as survival. And it wasn't wrong. That moment wasn't the right time to say what you wanted to say. The calculation was accurate. The environment was real. The cost of speaking was real. What's happened since is that the protocol kept running after the threat environment changed. Like a security system still locked down after the break-in is over. The alarm is still going, but the door is open. This isn't damage. This is a system waiting for new information. You've been measuring yourself against a standard that was never built for how you work. The expectation that you should respond immediately, fluently, without hesitation. That's not a universal human capacity. That's a script written for a nervous system that never learned to associate conflict with loss. Yours learned something different, something real, in a real place with real stakes. That learning kept you safe. For a long time, it was the most intelligent thing your system could do. You don't have to keep running the protocol in rooms where it no longer applies, not because you need to force yourself to speak up, but because the threat that built the silence. It's not here anymore. The framework that called you weak, it was describing a survival strategy it didn't recognize. You were never broken. You were protected. If this finally gave a name to something you've been carrying for years, drop a shield emoji in the comments.